This is the Commonwealth, where we feature leaders of disruptive change. Our guest today is Brad Moline, president and founder of Allo Communications. Allo is a telecommunications company started in rural Nebraska that brings high-speed internet to rural areas of the state. So Brad, thanks for joining me.
Well, thank you. It started in rural, and now I guess, Lincoln, I don't exactly consider rural.
Yeah, well, comparatively to other areas of the country, it definitely is. So Allo is in a unique position that the pandemic really hurt some businesses because it made everyone stay at home and everyone had to go remote. But Allo, being an internet company, that may have helped your all business. As far as like sales and new customers, how did the pandemic change?
Yeah, COVID has, just like with everybody's business, changed it. Number one, we really thought our growth would be more predominant in the business side of our business. That's what a lot of people don't realize is we offer service to the largest governmental entities, the largest business entities in the state, as well as to residents and consumers. And so our consumers are growing very rapidly, but our business acquisitions have actually slowed down as business has largely been disrupted.
I've heard that a bunch of businesses now are going completely remote. That it makes sense that the internet for an office wouldn't be as that market's not booming, but the home, the individual.
Exactly. The business side, they need both though, because if you're connecting from your home to your business to the world, that's usually how it works. And so we play both sides of that. But a lot of the new accounts that maybe their business has been disrupted, those haven't come on as fast, or they're focused on other things. Sometimes it's survival. Sometimes it's taking care of their customers in a very important way. I'm trying not to talk about specific customers.
Yeah, of course.
And they just want to delay what we thought would have happened months ago is now being delayed for a few months.
Okay, makes sense. So moving more into the history of the company, you started this in Imperial, Nebraska. And just to give people a sense of Imperial, how big of a town is it?
Well, Imperial is the telecom mecca. That's where everybody goes. No, I'm kidding. It's about 2,000 people, a little more than that, and right on the Colorado-Nebraska border or Nebraska-Kansas border. We're about 30 miles from Kansas and about 20 miles from Colorado.
Okay. You had a background in this industry before starting it, correct?
Yes. I was a founding CFO of a fairly high-growth company out of Kansas City. And we went from no employees to about 2,500 in about 36 months, and basically covered from western Kansas to the Atlantic Ocean and south. Okay. And so we were in Houston and Miami, but we're also in Topeka in that business. And I decided to go do something different and had a non-compete. So I went a little bit north and started in Nebraska. Actually, I really thought I would start on the Front Range or in Denver. And then I figured out there was a unique opportunity in western Nebraska and proved our business model out. And the rest is history.
Okay. How did you prove the business model out? And so I guess first, how did you pick Imperial?
Well, I grew up in Imperial.
Okay.
And I had two non-competes right around 9/11. And so I couldn't compete in manufacturing or telecom in certain parts of the country. And so I said, let's move north. Let's let our kids, who at that time were 5 and 8, get to know their grandparents. I thought that was a unique period of time. We were going to live there. And then I was really going to base the business out of, like I said, the Front Range. Still probably live in western Nebraska, but commute. And it's amazing how plans sometimes change.
Yeah, absolutely. How difficult was it proving out that business model in that small town?
It was actually easier.
Okay.
When you try to prove out a idea, any innovator, any agile situation, you don't go build Denver, Colorado. You want to do something small. And so this was 2003 that we were proving this out. Mm-hmm. And so this is, 7 to 10 years before the iPhone.
Yeah.
And we were doing fiber to the prem on the business side. Well, the soft switch hadn't been developed yet completely. The transport, we were looking at lasers, we were looking at fiber, we were looking at wireless, a bunch of things. And so we really wanted to prove out what is the best way. And all of a sudden some moons aligned, I guess, and we figured out the soft switch because voice was more important than internet back then.
Okay.
And
voice like a landline.
Yeah, 911. Again, we were business focused, not residential at this time.
Okay.
And then we figured out the soft switch. Then we figured out fiber. Prices came down so you could operate, and our goal was to operate in about 30,000 population increments. Okay. And so we started in Scottsbluff and Gering with the fiber and voice services out there. Improving it out, the customer demand was immediate, and our competition wasn't strong. And so we could rinse and repeat, and get some scale pretty quickly. And so I contend that it was a perfect petri dish.
Okay, interesting. And now fiber's known as the fastest internet out there. Was that the same, I guess, concept of fiber, or how did you know to double down on that specific technology?
Well, what I love to tell the story is when we started, I spent all my time convincing someone that fiber was better than a T1, which is 1.5 meg up and down TDM, in other words, a telco circuit. And it was very hard. I even had to turn up circuits for people for free and said, please plug it in someday. And they wouldn't. Then they'd have an issue. And then they'd finally try it and they go, wow, what used to take 10 minutes to do takes about 10 seconds. I said, yeah, that's fiber. And then I had the customer, and then they told two friends, and they told two friends. And so that was a competition and the knowledge gap that we had to deal with. We as technologists and we as operators, we knew it was better, but the experts within an organization are their local experts. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it took a little while. It wasn't as bad as I'm probably leading on, but when you have such a superior product, it was so frustrating at the time.
Yeah, I can believe it. So you mentioned that after Imperial, the next community you went to was Scottsbluff and Gering.
Well, actually, we've never owned network in Imperial.
Oh,
and to this day, we don't own network in Imperial. It just happened to be where I lived.
Okay. So is there an office?
Yeah, there's an office, and we have 25 or 30 people based out of that office. I won't say in that office anymore with COVID, because I think there's 2 people in the office today.
Okay.
So what we did is, yes, we had an office there, and it was billing, it was some customer service, marketing, those types of things. But then you have to go to the markets. You can be based only in one. And so we went to Scottsbluff and Gering. There was an interesting reason for that, why they were being particularly underserved. And so we attacked that. And also, remember, I said, you had to be about 25, 30,000 to have enough scale to make it work. Okay. And so that's why we reached out there.
Okay, interesting. And how did you decide that 25 to 30,000? So like when Google probably a few years later in the timeline rolled out fiber, and it was in their, I guess their threshold was like a million population. So how could you guys land on such a relatively smaller population density than like some of the other larger companies?
The reality, you just think of Agile. You want small, prove it, repeat. Small, prove it, repeat. I'd try not to comment on other people's business models, but I would say, the profitability, the high degree of customer service, we could prove out in that model. And then the other is, we knew internet was important and would be more important over time, but it hadn't become the lifeline it is today. And so voice, connectivity, location to location, business to business connectivity was all important, but it was all evolving at that time.
So after Scottsbluff and Gering, what were the next areas of the state that you went to? And I guess additionally, is it easier to expand geographically? Like once you have one area to go 100 miles away as opposed to a few hundred miles away?
Again, that's the business model people have. Google, for example, went from Kansas City to Raleigh-Durham to I think then Austin to then San Antonio. That was their model. And the next company will have disparate locations because they're looking for a specific type of market, economics, whatever. We came at it as saying, we believe this is flyover country. Most of the national carriers treat it as flyover country. We're going to treat it as our core. and it's going to be the most important to us. So we created a regional density. Well, what helped us was the Rural Nebraska Health Network, which was a unique governmental situation where they connected fiber amongst all these Western Nebraska healthcare organizations, hospitals, doctor's office, all those types of things was developed. Well, that provided us the transport to get to the next town. And so we were one of the anchor tenants on that, back in 2007.
Okay, interesting.
And we still are today.
Wow. So in 2015, Allo was acquired by the student loan processing company Nelnet for $46.25 million. How did that conversation start, or how did that relationship form?
Well, there's a whole bunch of stories around that. I was asked to go meet with Mike Dunlap and Chuck Norris, and I did no background work on the meeting, and I actually thought they were farmers. That's probably the easiest way to say it. And we were meeting in Ashland. Okay. And we were going out to look at some areas around Ashland. And so I figured that was people interested in Ashland because they lived there and largely an agriculturally based area. I get done with the meeting, shook hands, still think that they're probably farmers or some sort. You could tell they were business people, but not to say farmers aren't. I grew up on a farm and it's big business. And we talked about Lincoln during the conversation, and I said, Lincoln's very expensive and it's going to take a lot of money. And we've got customers who are very interested in us coming to Lincoln, but it's a big check. And we shook hands, and I went back to Imperial, and the next Monday morning, Mike Dunlap called me and said, hey, I'm interested and I can write a big check. How about you come talk to the mayor and some people in Lincoln tomorrow? And I said, sure. And then I Googled and found out that Mike Dunlap was involved in student loans and banking and a bunch of other things. And actually, I think his family owns a little bit of farmland, but that wasn't really his core business. Yeah. And I said, oh, okay, this could work. And it went from loaning money to, wait a minute, this is going to be a big enough project. It's going to be bigger than our base company. Why don't we just acquire it, being Nelnet? And that made the most sense.
Okay, interesting. And what makes Lincoln so much more expensive than a smaller town to build fiber out?
Just the number of people. If it takes X amount to do a town of 5,000, it takes 100 times to do a town of 500,000. And so, it's very capital intensive. We pass with our fiber every home, business, governmental entity. Our business model is to provide ubiquitous service across any community that we go into. Well, in a town like Ogallala, Nebraska, you can do that within 6 months, 8 months. In Lincoln, Nebraska, you just can't get it done that fast. It takes about 4 years and a significant amount of capital.
Like how has that process gone moving into the bigger market?
Again, it's part of regional density. So you can think about that. And before we came in, Lincoln was ranked 25th in the state of Nebraska as far as quality of internet. So, wow, what a great opportunity. And as with a lot of business, but for capital, you would do that. Mm-hmm. So for us, but for capital, Nelnet was and is a fantastic sponsor, fantastic promoter of what we're doing. They use our services. During COVID, we helped 3,000 people move home in 1 week.
Wow.
Well, most of those people were already on our fiber. And so the ability to work from home, learn from home, all those types of things was easy. Our network wasn't stressed or any of those types of things. So that was exciting. But the other part that was even better is, so remember I said Lincoln was ranked 25th in the state of Nebraska. Mm-hmm. I remember Mayor Beitler at the time said, and the top 6 are, and he mentioned one of the communities, and I said, yeah, those are all 6 our communities. Oh, okay. So, there was some interest there. So the city was very interested. City leaders were very interested. And now you fast forward today, and depending on what ranking you see, of the top 100 cities in the United States, which Lincoln's the 71st largest, Lincoln's second, third, or fourth best internet in the country.
Okay.
Upload speeds are usually in the number 3, latency number 2, overall internet scoring number 4. wow, that's pretty exciting. Yeah. And the others are either Google Fiber towns where both Google and AT&T, let's say, both upgraded their networks at the same time, so those communities are very well served. But Omaha isn't even close. And as a state, we need Omaha to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. So now that Lincoln is equipped with fiber, what's the plan for growth like moving forward? Is Omaha the next on the board, or is the goal to focus back in on the smaller?
Well, I can just talk about what we've announced so far.
Totally.
And we built Hastings last year. We're building Norfolk this year. So that kind of tells you the size of communities. We're also in the process of building Breckenridge, Colorado. Okay. And so that's a interesting location. 2 years ago, we built Fort Morgan, Colorado. And so we're bouncing around a little bit, but it's all within our region. We have redundant internet drains and dual instances of all of our service platform in Omaha and Denver. So you can probably get an idea of the region that we look at.
I spent the last winter in Winter Park, Colorado, so I hang out in the mountains. So having Breck on the map is a good excuse to go skiing for guys.
Absolutely. Well, where I live in Imperial, if I turn right, it's 4.5 hours to Lincoln. And if I turn left, it's 4.5 hours to Vail. So, there's two different opportunities there. Nice.
This is kind of like the last section that I wanted to pick your brain on. One of my first interviews for the show was with the former Microsoft executive, Jeff Rakes, and we discussed closing the technology gap between the Midwest and the coasts. And the first solution he laid out was faster internet in rural areas, that the kids need to both know how to use the internet and have access to high quality internet. And with Allo solving that problem, how do you approach your role in helping communities, equipping communities with the technology to succeed in the future?
Well, one, I shouldn't say I disagree with Jeff Rakes because he's done such amazing things. Almost everyone has a cell phone. Okay. And that cell phone can connect via Wi-Fi to our connectivity. So it isn't necessarily teaching people how to use it. It's enabling it. And so the first step is get the bandwidth. And that's what we're doing. Then us as a carrier, it's an interesting phenomenon, but we're an enabler. And in this case, enabler is a good thing. So we enable people to do whatever they want with it. And businesses, high school students, grade school students, teachers, governmental entities, they'll take it wherever they want. But what our job is to provide world-class connectivity to the rest of the world. So if you live in one of the Allo towns, and you can get gigabit service with very low latency, you can work anywhere in the world from one of our towns. Okay, that's opened the door and allows people to then take it wherever they want to go with it. But we just focus on the city limits. The next phase is, how do we serve the next 7 miles outside of the towns? Is it wireless? Is it still fiber? It's a tougher economic solution because your cost per sub is very high, and a lot of times it just doesn't work. So is it governmental support? Is it community support? How does it all work? So that's one piece. Is it wireless? There's some great forms of wireless. People love to talk about 5G. 5G is really not for very rural areas, in my opinion. It's for very, very dense cities. And only a few parts of Nebraska will 5G be a game changer. But how do you solve that? And so with that, what Jeff said is we need to get these people connected. Absolutely, we do. Some of our biggest economic producers in the state of Nebraska don't live in towns. We're an agriculture community for a lot of the state. How do we solve that? And there's some great people doing some wireless things. The university's looking at some really, really incredible ideas on technology. But as Allo, our role is just help them get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it'll be interesting to watch as now the majority of jobs are remote to see if people relocate to more rural areas of the country.
What I'm seeing, and it's very exciting to me, is already people are saying, wait a minute, I get to work from home. I get to, in some cases, learn from home, which to me isn't as exciting as working from home. I think whether you're in grade school or in college or med school, I don't care. That interaction and collaboration of school is, at a physical sense, is very important. So I hope we can get people back to learning together. But the work from home, there's many, many companies out there that says, this is what we'll pay. We don't care if you live in San Francisco or Bridgeport, Nebraska. Well, if you live in Bridgeport, Nebraska, obviously your disposable income's rather high compared to some of the other places. There's stories that I can tell, and I'm not going to tell them because I don't want to hurt the confidentiality of people, but there's people doing some amazing things all the way across our footprint in Nebraska and Colorado from our fiber, serving people in New York or Hong Kong or Singapore, and that's pretty interesting. So we're shrinking the world.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you think we continue to position like this area of the country as that?
The work ethic here is phenomenal. As we talk about moving others home, we had to move home too. So we're in the same boat, if you will, as our customers. And what we found is people are very efficient. People are working hard, like their job. They are interested in at least some sort of work from home going forward. Wow, that's interesting. But the other thing is this region of the country is known for its work ethic. So you combine that in the fact that you don't have to check up on people quite as much. I won't say you can just let people ignore them and everybody's going to do the right thing, but people will come to work. They will log on when they're supposed to. They will get their work done. Wow. And our quality of life is huge. My base home's in Imperial, Nebraska. Well, why is that? Well, because I can drive a Jeep all summer long. Personally, I don't like humidity, so I like it out in Imperial, and I can get to the office within 10 minutes, 6 minutes. It's very hassle-free to work out there. But yet, if I need some things that the city offers, I also maintain an apartment in Lincoln. I can get the best of kind of all lives. If I want to live in Lincoln, I live in Lincoln. If I want to live in Imperial, a town of 2,000, I can do that as well.
Well, Brad, thank you for joining me and sharing both your perspective and story. It's very interesting. So thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been fun, and it's going to be really exciting to see how business is done over the next few years. So thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. That concludes this episode. Thanks for being a member of the Commonwealth. If you enjoyed what you heard, please tap the share button and send it out to your friends and family. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a review. We occasionally have to leave out portions of an interview. Instead of deleting them forever, we upload them to our Patreon page. Go to patreon.com to check out our profile. Your subscription helps support the show. Tap subscribe to stay updated when we release new episodes.